Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Let's Talk ABM with me, Declan Mulkeen, CMO of account-based marketing agency Strategic ABM. ABM is one of the hottest B2B strategies right now, helping companies to win, grow and retain their most important accounts. This podcast allows me to spend some time talking to account-based marketing leaders about their ABM programs and share their insights with other B2B marketers, wherever you are on your ABM journey. Today I'm joined by Sophia Agustina. Sophia leads the advisory board for North America for the CMO Council, and until very recently she headed up global brand-to-demand strategy for IBM. Sophia, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Declan. Looking forward to this discussion.
Well, obviously the podcast is called Let's Talk ABM, so the focus will be ABM, but because of the interesting change that you've had over the course of the last few weeks with your role, we may touch on a couple of points there as well. But let's talk about ABM and the name of the podcast obviously is ABM. Let's Talk ABM and its evolution. You've been involved in account-based marketing since I think about 2012, which it makes you a veritable ABM veteran. There aren't many people who've been involved in it for that long. That's about 12 years, I think now. Yeah. So tell me, going back in time, if you can go back in time, what did ABM look like back then, 12 years ago?
Yeah.
What have you witnessed? I'll ask 2 or 3 questions. What have you witnessed perhaps over the course of these last 10, 12 years? Mm-hmm. And perhaps tell us a little bit more about what you've seen in that kind of evolution.
Yeah, I can't believe it's been more than a decade. But I love ABM. I think it's the true way of engaging accounts, whether you're trying to reach a net new account and gain relationship with them, or you're trying to expand your customer footprint into that account. So I was at Iron Mountain in 2012, and at the time, I think ABM for technology for ABM just started popping up. And I know you mentioned, Declan, that ABM has been around for almost 2 decades, right? But I mean, talking about veteran, I think you are a veteran in ABM. But in 2012, we were actually lucky at Iron Mountain. We had a lot of customer-centric technologies that we used. At the time, I think Demand-based just started. They just launched their personalization and form ABM modules, and we were the first few clients to use the ABM tool for our accounts. And at the time, we didn't even have a formal ABM program. We were still doing enterprise marketing, mid-market marketing, and then we have a couple of vertical marketing within healthcare and government. But with the use of technology at the time, demand-based, as well as we were using Eloqua. So Eloqua was quite robust too at the time. I haven't really looked into what Eloqua has been doing lately, but they actually had personalized URL to develop landing pages. So we actually did a pilot. So we took about 200 of our Fortune 1000 accounts, and then we did a pilot and make it a true ABM, where we work with Demand-based and Eloqua to identify basically, the accounts. And then we did personalize. I mean, seriously, we were so lucky that we had those tools that it feels like a lot of companies are still trying to do that, but we did that in 2012. So we personalized the experience from the 200 accounts perspective based on the industry they're in. So we tested on healthcare as well as financial service within those 200 accounts, and then the rest, just going into the account holistically. And then from there, we saw actually the performance doubled when we personalized the experience. So that's how we started ABM at Iron Mountain. It started. I know technology shouldn't be the starting point of how you start a strategy, but in this case, I think we were just amazed by what that technology demand-based did, right? And then we expanded it to Fortune 1000, and then over time, SiriusDecision had their ABM strategy, so we began to create a framework with them for one-to-one, and then one too few and one too many, and then the rest is history. I've been doing ABM since then. I've worked with other companies, small, medium size, and then IBM. We've Depending on the target accounts as well as the audience that we are reaching and the solutions we're offering, we use that framework: the one to one, one to few, one to many.
And what do you think, Sophia, you've seen in that 12 years? What obviously it's been evolving very quickly, probably
Yeah.
particularly in the last 5 or 6 years with regards to the introduction of technology, as you mentioned, and the rise of one to many ABM. But
Mhm.
what would you say are kind of the one or two things you've seen in that time that
Yeah.
you've kind of, and the different companies you've worked at, and obviously that you're quite active in the ABM community
Hmm.
as well. What perhaps are a couple of things that you've seen?
Yeah. So I think intent data is really, really helpful for identifying the right accounts to go after, especially if you have, for companies like IBM or CA Technologies, we have, many, many, many accounts that we're trying to prioritize. Understanding intent data, making sure that aligning with the sales team to identify which accounts, we want to cross sell, upsell, expand into the new business. And then I mentioned about personalization. I think um, I came from B2C, so it's very natural for me to make sure that when we market to the accounts or to the individual that we are targeting, that it's personalized to the message personalized to the individual or the account based on their pain points. But I think companies are still struggling with that. So I think, being able to leverage personalization tools and strategies. I know that a lot of marketing automation tool now have dynamic content that you could personalize based on roles, based on titles, and then now with AI especially, right? Like, you could then scale that personalization to even a larger um, customer experiences. So I would say those are some of the tools that in 2012, I don't think there was intent. I think we worked with Bombora in 2015 and we started using intent for, a lot of our paid media efforts.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that. Obviously, 2015 for many people who might be listening to this podcast is also a long time ago as well. So,
Yes.
so it's funny how, I mean, it's only whatever 9 years ago, but it's funny how Bombora and the likes have come onto the scene. And I think we might touch on the question of AI actually a little bit later
Sure.
in our chat. But as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, obviously you were at IBM for about 4 or 5 years until very
Hmm.
very recently. But let's talk, because that's an important chapter in your ABM life. Let's talk a little bit about the ABM kind of program, the ABM, and the world there at IBM as well. And what was interesting, obviously, with the work you were doing, I think you were kind of, or the way that you explained it to me when we were chatting previously, I think you said you were the bridge between brand marketing and product led growth
Yeah.
motions. I think that's how you described it to me on the
Hmm.
demand side. So tell us more about how you acted as a bridge, because that's
Yeah.
quite a novel thing.
Yeah, I know. And I think now the brand to demand notion or motion is now, you know, being leverage as well in many companies. I believe like ANA, I just spoke in their conference as well. We had a 1 day conference around brand to demand, connecting the dots between, like you said, brand awareness to demand gen and PLG. Yeah, so I actually lead the strategic partnership. Well, I led. It's only been 2 weeks, so it's a little weird. I feel like I'm still working there, but I led the brand to demand strategy. Basically, we actually use the intent uh, technology tools to identify all of the um, you know accounts that came in from the brand awareness initiatives that we had. And again, IBM is a really really big companies, and we have about 5 solution sets. So having 5 solution sets, which means that we have almost probably almost 20 buying groups, right? Because like each of the solution sets have multiple audiences as well, and within those buying groups we have different roles, right? So with that, and especially as I was leading the strategic partnership and global demand, we have thousands and thousands of channels from social, paid media, content syndication, the websites and our third party partnership and all that. But they all, typically after 3 to 4 touches from top of funnel, they all land to our IBM.com, right? So when they land into IBM.com, we actually use those intent tools to identify the companies that come in. And then we look at intent. We work very, very closely with the data analytics team, from marketing, as well as the different tools that we use. We use demand base, we use G2, we used Bombora, and a few others. And then we identify that, and we have a team that actually analyze, like what that looks like from the brand perspective, with our ABM efforts, our sponsorship efforts, like what kind of companies that came in. And then from there, then to your point, how do we then bridge it to PLG and demand gen? Is that depending on the account size, we'll then tier them into ABM, demand gen, and PLG. So the bigger accounts that are our customers, we work with the field marketing and the ABM team to make sure that they continue the engagement and work with sales. And then the mid market or the small accounts then goes into the demand gen, and then the net new accounts that goes into PLG. So like that's how we are actually bridging the gap between the brand awareness into demand, and then from there, then you do the usual nurture stream and and account based marketing with working with sales and field marketing. It's a big
Well,
operations. It's a really big operations.
well, I wouldn't expect anything else from IBM, to be honest. From the big blue, they still call it the
The
big
big
blue,
blue.
don't they?
I,
Yeah, I
I
wouldn't expect anything else.
we don't hear that as often now.
Well, that's because I'm obviously showing my age clearly, from when I was looking for jobs back in the 1990s. Anyway, let's just touch on a couple of things there, actually, about the brands that you mentioned before and some of the brand initiatives. Obviously, when you see IBM, and I think there's been a massive shift in how IBM goes to market, and how the level of brands is much more kind of like than before the big blue that we would associate before, the
Yes.
kind of huge servers and that kind of very kind of like guys in white shirts kind of approach, really, from North America. But I was just thinking about some of the events that you do there. What kind of big
Yeah.
events like IBM Think. You also mentioned to me before that I think you're involved in sponsoring or participating in the Grammys in the United States, the US Open tennis, for example. Why would IBM be involved in those kind of events? And how do you take those events and and justify the investment and the
Yeah.
time? How do you link that together?
Yeah, it's true. Actually, until recently, a couple years ago, those events, the Grammys or the US Open, the Masters, uh, the company leveraged that in partnership for brand awareness. And, uh, obviously at the time too, IBM and those sponsorship, the companies that they sponsor, it's just their partnership has been going on for about 30 years. So, over time it has evolved. But one of the things that we did differently this past couple of years is that we leveraged the brand building experiences from those major moments, the US Open, Think, and the Grammys, to get closer to the customer. So by knowing, what their activities are digitally, as well as, our relationship with them, by account with the sellers and the account relationship, we're able to deliver a very tailored and personalized approach through these events. And so, we invite, a few hundreds of our accounts to these big events. We host them, very tailored experiences within the suite at the US Open, for example. And then it's almost like a partnership with these accounts, Declan. So, I mean, it is a partnership with this account. So, like, we also engage with them to understand what their needs are within the accounts, because those are, the top 1,500 accounts that we engage with. And that actually help us too to improve our solutions as well as we go to market. uh, and then from there we also use this sponsorship and partnership to engage with these accounts digitally. We have virtual engagement. Actually, this week is Think week, and so I'm in Boston, and most of my colleagues, are in the Boston Convention Center. So as an example for Think, we invited about 4,000, um, clients to the event. But then we also have an on-demand experience. If you go to ibm.com/event/thing, you can see the on-demand. I think it's still going on till tomorrow. So yeah. So we try to, get closer to each of the customer and the accounts, especially around our top 1,500 accounts that we partner with.
And I'm not sure whether I was at a HubSpot event in Boston a few years ago. I'm not sure whether that was the same location or not,
Yes,
but
it
it was
is.
certainly a very big. Was it the same
Yes.
location? It was a huge event and a hall and everything. Yeah. So just to touch on that, then, really, you mentioned something there because you've mentioned at the beginning of the conversation as well. This whole thing around ABM and personalization, and you also mentioned their personalized experience. And I think what's probably interesting about that, a lot of people talk about personalization through dynamic content, through technology, but I would argue that what you're doing there is much more, without wanting to say white glove, but definitely a lot more human personalization. Would that be fair? Would that be fair to say?
I would say 50-50. It used to be probably 90% human and then 10% digital. But since I, help them to kind of create a digital experience and using personalization strategy, it's now about probably 60-40%, 60% human, 40% and 40% digital. And I think it's really, really key, right? Because we are still engaging with the person, right? We are still engaging with a human. I think now also a lot of companies are trying to go into the market with people first. I was just with Mark and a couple others discussing about people first strategy, because getting closer to your customer it is about helping the account, but ultimately how do you even help the individual that you're trying to solve their pain points, make them look good, do their job better, help them, that partnership that I mentioned, Declan, when we work with the IBM accounts, is truly understanding what their pain points are and working together through consulting to help them elevate the experience. Actually, yesterday, see, I'm still passionate about IBM. I mean, I was just, I feel like I'm like, their ambassador still. But, like even yesterday, I think they interviewed Citigroup, and they talk about how, like um, IBM and Citigroup actually um, innovate together basically within it. As you know, these companies are, older companies, right? So they have like mainframes and older systems. I can talk all day about this, but it's all about the customer. It's true. It's that personalization strategy. But then imagine if, let's say the C-suite or the, are invited to the event, and then people from Citigroup then went digitally and see the same experience, right? Like, with the on demand, basically. So typically when I do these Grammys and US Open, we personalize the landing page to greet them with the accounts. We actually personalize, like you say, messaging based on their roles. We have 5 different solution sets, like I mentioned. So we, personalize by security and all that. So but it's not on IBM. I did that too previously for other companies. I know I can go on this.
No, well, I think it's also probably testament to, there are certain companies with certain cultures, and I think IBM is clearly one of them. That once you've been an IBMer, you're always an
With an
IBMer, right? And I
IBM.
think that's,
Yeah.
you could be an IBMer, and an ABMer. So I think once you've been once you've been an ABMer at IBM, then obviously that's never going to leave. That's never going to leave you.
Right,
And
right, right.
look, I think that's important because these companies leave a big a big mark on your life, right? Because of the work that you do,
Yeah.
and the quality of the work that you do as well, which I think is really important. I want to ask you a question about intent, because you mentioned it at the beginning of the show, and you mentioned that as one of the kind of the biggest kind of innovations that you've seen in ABM over the
Mm-hmm.
course of the last 12 years. But can you help the audience understand? Because a lot of people, for some people, there's been a lot of kind of, how would I describe it? Probably negativity around it, probably in terms of intent. It's you just need to get a list, and then you just need to contact these companies, and these companies are buying, and that's easy. And I remember speaking to Danny Nail, who's over at Salesforce. I think he heads up the ABM Center of Excellence at Salesforce, and he was saying there's a huge difference between intent and interest.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that somebody is interested in a subject doesn't mean that they are exhibiting any intent,
Mm-hmm.
which obviously intent goes, I think you were talking before about propensity to buy.
Mm-hmm.
So could you share with the audience just a little bit about the way that you've used intent?
Yeah, and Danny is right on that because typically I think a lot of people also used intent and interest interchangeably. However, again, I grew up with Eloqua, so Eloqua, they launched the book Digital Body Language, where it's all about the digital experience, right? At the time, it was the first party data, I think, right? So that's where the interest comes in because when accounts are interested in your uh, domain, which means that they're almost like in the consideration stage, right? Because like they are interested to go into your domain, and then depending on the type of content that they consume, then you also will know where they are in the buying journey. However, intent, I think it spans a lot more than just a person's behavior, right? So it actually encompasses the company intent, and also depending on the um, partner or vendors that you are partnering with, it could be content consumption externally, it could be keywords, it could be predictive models that they use. So I think all of that, if there's a company that can integrate all of that intent externally, keywords, consumption of content, and then predictive model, how to generate and accelerate demand, plus the first party data that you have, I think that is a true digital experience, journey, or behavior that you want to get. uh, but I think that would cost a lot of money, right? Like IBM, again, was lucky that we had so many different intent tools, as well as Iron Mountain, we had also a couple intent tools. um, so I would always marry whatever intent you have with the digital behavior. But ultimately, it is really, really important, especially if you're going to market as an account experience or account base, is to work with your sellers, and making sure that your account plans, you infuse the intelligence to them, but as well as listen to what they're looking and what their quota is, and how you can help them with that account. So I would say it's takes three to tango. It usually takes two, but for ABM it takes three to tango. So sales,
Well, I think that'll
yeah.
be on one of the social promotions that we do for this episode. We'll definitely have that, or we might even make a T-shirt or something. So so interesting. I mean, I just was making some notes there, and I think one of the things that you said, which I really loved, was, and I think that's probably what separates ABM from other marketing disciplines, is you were saying previously about ABM really helps the individual.
Uh-huh.
And you said, you're not just looking at the account, you're actually talking to and thinking about the individual. What are their challenges? What are their job challenges? A little bit kind of what keeps them awake at night.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, for me, going back to the point around personalization, that's probably why it's so key rather, to personalize to the account and
Yes.
personalize to the individual, particularly at the one-to-one level, right? Because you're talking, going back to your point around tango, you're going back to your point about, you've got to know their steps and know their
Mm-hmm.
and
Partnership.
know how they, yeah. So is there anything you could share with us on that in terms of that degree of getting to know the individual? Is there any anecdote you could share? Anything you think about in your memory banks around that area?
Yeah, I think it's been around for many, many decades, Declan. It's just that I think that technology is trying to keep up with it now, and also, the talent and people using technology. So, persona marketing, right? I mean, it's been around 20 plus years, I would say, even more. The product marketing team would go to Forrester and understand the persona, what's their interest. I actually used to work for Lycos. I'm I'm also dating myself, but that was 2003, and we did a persona marketing, and we try to understand, in addition to what they consume online, what do they do? Do they travel? Do they shop? How many times do they shop? Frequency and all that. So I think knowing that person's interests, like what Danny mentioned, not only within the what they consume for their business, for their jobs, but also like knowing who they really are is really the key. I'm actually working with a partner, as part of the CMO council engagement that I'm with now. They actually have psychographic data as well as interest data based on the person, not only the keywords and for the jobs, but also on the person. Do they shop? Do they like music? Do they? So that way you could actually tailor your communications. They even have like the communication style that person engage with. You could personalize that communication based on who they are, right? Like, you work 8 hours, but other than that, you are, you're Declan, I see you like the beaches, you love your kids, you do like white shirt, I see, without the tie for big blue. But so if, let's say, your white is your favorite color, if we have that information about you and we don't send you red or orange, you are more likely to respond. So, like, in addition to what we talk about, takes three to tango for ABM, so that's intent, interest in the company level, and working with sales. It would be also great if we understand you as the person, and that's why I'm working with this partner, and I think it's really, really great. To create this, we call it the accelerated demand. Um, so I guess maybe it takes four to tango, but three to tango is better, I think, for now.
Well, you need to make sure you let me know what number it is before I get the t-shirts made.
Three.
Three. So I think just a couple more questions on your time at IBM. What Now, you've obviously worked for different companies in doing account-based marketing. You're also very active in the account-based marketing community,
Yeah.
and you're highly respected in the ABM community. But what would you say makes ABM? This is quite hard to say. But what do you think makes ABM at IBM different to
Yeah.
perhaps other experiences that you've seen out there?
I would say, I think I touched about on it a little bit, but I would say um, the fact that IBM is such a huge company, and they had they had 40 business units when I first joined IBM, which means that they have hundreds and hundreds of products, and the target audience actually overlap between these products. But then, we were able to um, create 5 campaigns out of it now. I would say that's the only difference with that. Then it's harder to actually do a true ABM approach on the account, and the way that we then activate ABM at IBM is through 4 different scenarios. So the major moments and strategic partnership that I led, and then we do paid media, and then we do outbound marketing, and then you'll also work with field marketing, and each of these teams then go to market into these accounts um, within their teams, but then it sort of integrated uh, integrated into the solution sets, basically. So it is that's the I would say that's the challenge, is that it is very, very, very difficult to do a holistic ABM approach at IBM. But I would say ABM, if done correctly, and the most important is really, really engaging the customer and the individual with the right message, right content, right offer to address their pain points and meet their needs. Throughout my career, you will increase your average deal size typically by 2 to 3x. It will help you to improve the customer experience, the funnel demand. Also, I was able to actually improve by up to 8x, but depending on the scope. So I think you had a really, really good strategy too. I think one of your posts you mentioned about ABM is not just about marketing, but it's like ABM motion, ABM measurements, ABM, all the M can be interchangeable. It's true. Like, I think people think that ABM is just marketing, but it's not. It's actually a company go-to-market strategy.
Well, it's good to know that that somebody sees my posts. Sophia. Okay, well, look, just a couple of questions really that just spring to mind from what you just said. What would you, because you talked a lot about demand, you talked a lot about brand, and I know that I think I mentioned to you when we were chatting before that one of the first guests I had on the show way back in 2000, I think, was Sangram Vajri, who I think you know. And he said to me at the time, and it's always stuck in my mind actually, he said to me, brand drives demand.
Yes.
And I've kind of seen that myself with the work that I do at the agency over the course of the last 3 or 4 years. A lot of the brand work that I do is certainly driving demand within the agency. But can you share with me a little bit of your thinking there about how do you connect the dots between brand and demand? Because that's clearly something that you've been doing there at IBM.
Yeah, I agree. Sangram is, as always, has a great, mindset on ABM, flip the funnel, and all that. But it's true, brand drives demand because I think at the end of the day, it's a holistic approach, like how you go to market from the top of funnel into when you close the deal, and even after, right? The experience after you engage and close the deal, you help them buy your solutions. It's an integrated approach. So I'm a true believer of having an integrated marketing approach from top to funnel until uh, the account relationship with them. And I think and I believe that the way that you engage your customer is your brand. Like, how many times have we experienced a bad customer experience with a call center or in store, and then they used to be your favorite brand, and then after that you're like, oh my god, what just happened there? I spent money with them and look what happened. Or even like your family has the brand or whatever. So, and brand, I think we overuse the word brand uh to think that it's only top of funnel. Every day you see brand. I mean, Apple, I think, as an example, Apple, right? Like, there's such a, I mean, there's no differentiation between when you watch an Apple advertising, if it's a brand campaign or if it's a demand campaign, right? Because like all they say is like what will benefit the user, like why this phone or this Apple Watch, why you should get them, because like it will benefit the audience. So I think brand drives demand, is right. But also I think at the end of the day, it is how do you engage your customer, how do you engage your market, what is it that you're trying to go to market to help solve the customer needs, um, and then hit that jackpot, gain that relationship with that customer.
Well, hopefully, yeah. And I think, yeah, it's funny. I remember there was a famous quote about Coca-Cola, and I think I think they're one of the biggest advertising spenders in the world. And I think somebody once asked their CMO many years ago, why are you spending so much money on billboard ads and all this kind of thing? And he goes, well, the day that we stop spending money on marketing will be the day that we are number 2.
Yeah.
And I think if you stay, if your adverts are constantly your front of mind of everyone,
Yeah.
then those adverts, you're basically, encouraging people to experience your brand and therefore
Yeah.
to buy your brand. Yeah.
Also, I think it's the reason why I feel like, there's that differentiation between brand to demand is also the outcomes, right? I think marketers need to really, really be clear about the outcomes of their efforts. So, as we all know, marketing tend to be the, the first one to be cut in budget because like they think certain, initiative is not driving demand. But again, it depends on the goal of each of your initiative and what it is that you're looking to accomplish. And then ultimately, how would that, connecting that dots of all the different channels that you have to drive into the pipeline and revenue. And I think that, that's my role actually at IBM, connecting those dots and then, identifying what would be the KPIs for each of the channels, like how would that drive into the pipeline goal as well as the conversion to work with sales to close.
Let's talk about something which I know is very close to your heart, which is the 9Cs framework that you were explaining to me before when we were chatting. Can you share with the audience what the 9Cs framework is a little bit and how it helps ABM or go to market?
Yeah. So I have a co-creator that, creates this 9Cs framework. We actually met at a leadership program a couple years ago, but we've had about 20 years of experience in our marketing journey. And, as we were chatting time and time again, what we found is that the customer is, number is key, right? They used to say customer is king. I know we don't hear that anymore, as we don't hear big blue anymore, but still customer is the center of everything that you do, right? So by knowing um, your customer, then you'll be able to know what campaigns you're going to run and what content you're going to create. So the 9Cs framework is actually a framework to get closer to your customer. So the customer is in the middle of all the other different go-to-market strategy. And so there's 9 different C's. The first one is the customer, understand your audience, understanding your customer. What is it that you're trying to help them with? And then we look at company centricity, whether they are customer centric, how they treat their employees, how they engage their customer, how they respond to their customer requests. And then it goes into competitors, contacts, who are your collaborators. It could be your tech partners. It could also be the SMEs, your influencers. So each of that, from the go-to-market strategy, we identify about 9 different criteria for each of the C's that would make it's almost like a barometer to see how this go-to-market motion is getting you closer to the customer. And then once you know that for market landscape, company, competitors, contacts could also be, where are you marketing? Are you marketing in Spain? Are you marketing in Asia? So like the way that you market differentiate based on the context. Once you know all that, then you'll be able to uh, craft a better way to engage your customer through your distribution channel. So channel is another C. And then what content would you distribute through those channel? And content doesn't necessarily mean it's just a podcast or white paper, but it's really like what makes the customer content as well. Like it could be the offer, it could be the relationship and all that. So like what content, and then from there, then you can create a more relevant campaigns that would help to improve conversion. So there are 9Cs altogether. It's customer, company, competitors, contacts, collaborators, channels, content, campaign, and conversion.
And conversion, I was just making my notes here to what we'll do. If I think you shared with me a model before, we'll probably share that with the podcast if you're happy with that, so that people can actually see a little bit more about what you're doing or some more information about that. Some rapid fire questions,
Yes.
Sophia, just to finish off. Rapid fire questions that I ask every guest, and so you've got to give me your quickest, answer. But so you've been, as I mentioned at the top of the show, you've been involved in ABM for a long time. You're a veteran, okay? You've got all
All
the
right.
medals, and you've probably got all the war wounds as well.
Okay.
What has been your greatest ABM learning?
Um, I would say integrating alignment between marketing and sales that continues to evolve year over year. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree. What is the hardest part rather of ABM?
Um, I think getting alignment across the organization, getting buy-in from, executives, and then especially, I mean, now it's easier, but back in the day, it's something that you have to continue to get buy-in from the company.
The greatest misconception about ABM?
That I think I mentioned earlier that it is a marketing job. It's everybody's job. It's
I
not
like
only
that.
a
That's
marketing
very
job.
short, very. I love that. It's very short, very sweet. Love that. And the last question: we're recording this on a Wednesday,
Okay.
but you imagine we fast forward in time and it's a Friday afternoon, and you've had a really tough week, and you're going to close down your laptop, and you're going to have a Diet Coke or a glass of wine or whatever you
Or
like to
bubbly.
have, or a bubbly, which is a new beverage to me. Um, you get a phone call from an old friend who says, "Hey, Sophia, I'm looking to launch an ABM program, and I've been asked to come in on Monday and present to the CEO." What's that one piece of advice you would give them to make sure they include in that presentation on that Monday morning?
Mm. What not to? I would say, what's the outcome of this ABM strategy, right? Like at the end of the day, the CEO wants to know what's the what will it deliver to the company? What's the value to the company? So there's many things that would drive to the outcome, but just, communicate what will ABM do for the company and their customers.
I love that. The outcome based is a great one. Obviously, CEOs need to have very clear messaging that aligns with what they're trying to do as well. So that's a great piece of advice to finish off with. Sophia, thanks so much for sharing your ABM journey with us today, your long ABM journey, and I wish you every success with your new venture. And thank you very much. If you enjoyed this episode of Let's Talk ABM, be sure to subscribe so you're notified when a new episode is posted. Feel free to rate and review this podcast. Thanks so much for listening.